Welcome back to another week of the Let's Talk Social Innovation podcast. I hope you've had an amazing start to your week, but if not, we can kickstart that right here. I'm your host, Ian Kahinde, and this week on for Let's Talk Social Innovation, this is a very exciting find for me. We have Dr. Abdourahmane Seck from Gaston Berger University in Senegal, all the way from Senegal, y'all. How we doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Like I said, I'm very excited to have you on today, y'all. We're going to be talking about his backstory, what's made him into the man he is today.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about issues that are facing West Africa. We'll talk about his greatest life advice and lessons that he can pass on to us. And then after our artist spotlight, we'll be getting into his current project and research on something he calls Memography. But anyways, formalities out of the way, let's get right into your backstory. Take me to the beginning in Dakar.
To the beginning, Dakar, you may have to imagine a country that had been just get into its independence just 13 years ago, because I have been born just only 13 years before before Senegal get into independence. So it comes with a lot of contradictional insights. What remains for the hopes that came with the first day, we said that, okay, now from this day, you guys, you want no more cries, because now we are in the office and the colonizer has gone. And also we were started, I think, to see how the disappointment was growing up more and more. So then, yeah, I had been born into this context, you know.
Instability.
Maybe wondering one, at least. Wondering one, you know. And within our families, that, yeah, they got the means, to, personally, I got the, maybe I can call it chance. I can also not call it chance. But anyhow, I got a good kidhood, growing up, because, my parents, and particularly my dad, used to be a high level civil servant. So then, yeah.
Like working for public office?
Yeah, working for the government. And at that time, in Africa, yeah, lot of services was under the hand of the state, because thanks to the nationalizations, of services and etc. Because what we call the providential states, it was the case. So the states wanted to be the one who take care about the bank system, about the educational system. So then what we know today, as privatizations and liberalization, neoliberalism, was not accurate at that time. So then the state used to be the most important actors, in all these 70s. Later it changed, but at the time I was born, yeah, states used to play an important role, and people who were also serving states used to, yeah, I think, to be kind of uh, having social privilege, you see. We can argue against these things, Later, I was growing up, yeah, I learned to be more critical about this change. But anyhow, it was like this.
When we're talking about social privilege, are we saying that it's in line with corruption, or are we just saying that they live on a higher plane?
Yeah, you ask here a very important question. I do remember that we used to have these two lines, and but the history is different. From the house of my father, for example, I remember how sometimes by Sundays we went to go to visit some friends of my dad living in different others era. And those era, maybe compare it to what maybe here in United States we could have called, years ago, Beverly Hills place, or those kind of things.
Mhm.
I don't want to be so affirmative, but I think that most of the civil servants, they were also members of the ruling parties at the time.
Mhm.
Was in the kind of corruption things. They were corrupt. But I do remember that my dad was, very often told to my more bigger brothers that, this is not an option for him, and then they had to struggle and to get ready because he won't do nothing, to facilitate somehow things, because in his moral and ethic life is not easy.
Mhm.
But also I do remember several times, having him back home completely sad, completely yes, completely sad, and saying things at the time I was not able to process, you know, like the way that Senegal was going on. And he was sad to see that, the officials, the governments, people who were in charge were just jeopardizing the possibilities of the countries,
Mhm.
to get. And my dad worked in the bank system, national bank system. So then he testimonied the way that, for corruptions, the state could have asked people to give the money, of the
Mhm.
nation to some specific guys who even everyone knew that they will never reimburse the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I grew up into this context, grew up in the time that was very close to the Independence Day, and also what the independence was becoming, you know, 10 years and 12, 15 years, those kind of things, you see. And testimonying this, having my dad somehow working for the government, at least for the administration of the government, made, uh, making those kind of comments, and also in my house, we were talking a lot about a guys, who was like a ghost. His name was Mamadou Dia. Mamadou
Mhm.
Dia played a very important role in the history of Senegal. Actually, he's the one who signed it, the Independence Act.
Mm.
But, a few years later, he completely get vanished.
Just disappeared.
He disappeared, in the public space because, uh, uh, power, and particularly state power, is very much linked, to international imbalance.
Mhm.
Ja and the other guys, most well know, Leopold Sedar Senghor, uh, who was also the president of Senegal. They were a very good comrades, and good activists. They did well together. And uh, and at the time, at the independence, Ja had had incarnate, represented the most, let's say, uh, trustful way to
Mm.
truly get the country independent.
Mm.
And Senghor was a guy who was very much compromising, with a lot of things. And at the end, they started to have their relationships, their friendship, but also their intellectual and political commitment get completely antagonist.
Mm.
But and Ja lost the fight, you know, and Senghor won. And when Senghor won, Ja has disappeared. He had been everywhere. No one, no in the textbooks, no in the, it,
Just nothing on him at all.
nothing on him. It
He
was
just disappeared from the history of the
from the
country.
history, but it remains in in the domestic spaces, you know, in the alternate memories, in the rebellious subculture,
Mm.
But in the public surface, it could have been very dangerous to talk about Ja.
So
And
you would almost say he has
mm,
like I say the moxie of a
mm,
folk legend almost.
please come again.
Like he's almost a myth.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It used to be at the time a myth. Ja used to be a myth at the time. I'm talking about,
Mm.
you know, uh, Africa also is very much amazing for several reasons. You know, uh, some people used to think that if one day Ja could come back, maybe we could have the chance to get again the country on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens later in the early 80s that Ja was again, in the public surfaces because a lot of things happening, meanwhile, and he got uh, uh, yeah, he got put out of jail, you see, and even he got the chance to be back on politics, and try to do. But the country had been already very much changed,
Mm-hmm.
you see. So then, uh, yeah, it looks like he was just a man for a past season, you
Mm.
know, because at the I remember the the at these early 80s, you see, uh, there was an election in Senegal, 1983, and Ja was in,
Mm.
and I was very young, but Ja was so important, in the backyard and saloons, of my dad and political conversation that I I was so disappointed. Say, oh, so guys, we all these guys are talking about. He he just this. It looked like this. He was who was Ja was at the time quite already an old man.
Mm.
The jails. You know he he got yeah he got jailed for so long. He quite lost his eyes. So then this figure was not what
You
was in my
imagined he
mind,
would
you
be,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, and also what he was saying, yeah, I found it a little bit disappointed. But yeah, again, as I said, the country had already changed, and Ja was belonging somehow, in the memory of and the history of this country.
Mm.
So election used also to be very much tricky,
Mm.
stolen in Africa. But I think even uh, without this, Ja was truly uh, the victim of the politics of Senghor to get him forgotten by the Senegalese. He
Mm.
had been forgotten. This being said, uh, later again into history of Senegal, Ja, ja will again make several coming back, but there's also different history.
Mm. So, with the context of
Mm,
everything that you just said,
mm,
especially with your
mm,
father
mm,
working in a
mm,
field that one
mm,
could say
mm,
was corrupt,
mm,
in hindsight,
mm,
how did the knowledge of your father, fighting with his
mm,
moral compass,
mm.
how did that impact the way you see the world today?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and also I got from my father. I and my siblings got from my father sometimes, several uh, several narrative on his own life, and at the time and we understood that when he was more young, he used to be kind of syndicalist, who call it in French, but I think in English people can say part of some union trade,
Hmm.
syndicalism. So then and he got also a lot of problems, about this. Yeah, This is a very interesting question because I have the feeling that my dad wanted to truly to protect us against, the turbulence
Hmm.
of the life. So then also, as I said, uh, we were kind also of petit bourgeois, not because my dad or his dad got capitals, or those kind
Money,
of
yeah.
things, because just at that time when you were a grand commis de l'état, like a high ranked civil servant,
Hmm.
yeah, you got good salary, uh, you yeah, there was some regular advantage privilege,
Hmm.
so that was there. So compared to what the whole rest of the societies was having, yeah, you must confess that you were somehow s- having some social privilege.
Hmm.
The point is, in addition to this, some people also went to the corruption things and economy. So then, first of all, my dad, as I said, I think tried to protect us, to get us not be too much exposed, for the dangers and risk of the life. But meanwhile, also he was a very sensitive guy of social injustice problems.
So it really got to him.
Yeah, and then I have chosen, to go to take the risk and to try to commit myself, since a very young boy, to any kind of contribution I could have made, to get things fixed in the right way,
Mm.
you know. And I remember, uh, because also I lost my dad quite soon, and my mom was in charge for our education, you know, and mostly in Africa, people think that okay, so the dad, the patriarch, the strongest voice, etc., etc., and the woman has just to follow. And
Hmm.
when these kind of things happens, it's so then yeah, you lose your fathers earlier in your life, and then your mom get into the responsibility. I think that there's also a lot of things to process, for them, and particular also for my mom, because I and also my brothers, we were teenagers at the time.
Mm.
So what that means, we were just terrific, and almost most of us was very much involved with, in the syndicat of their schools and all those kind of things. So then, yeah, in the general context, that was full of, social troubles and social demonstrations and so and so. So I guess, yeah, we put on her a lot of anxiety, but it is how it is.
Your mother being
Yeah.
so independent by
Mm,
herself is
mm,
obviously an outlier in
mm,
African culture, especially back
mm,
then.
mm.
Still to this day,
Yeah.
but especially back then. I
Mm,
know my
mm,
family's from Nigeria. I
mm,
know a lot about
mhm,
West African culture.
mhm.
Uh, Even though she's probably not going to hear this,
Yeah.
I'm very proud of her
Mm,
for
yeah.
taking care,
Mhm,
taking charge of
mhm,
your family.
mhm,
Now, moving on,
mhm.
take me through your schooling journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the time, also what I call privilege.
Hmm.
I don't want people to get me wrong. Actually, it's not a matter of having more money or those kind of things.
Hmm.
What I call privilege is kind of things you may not at that time find in several others' houses. But in my house, we used to have a library with a lot of books.
Hmm.
This is a privilege, you know. Also, my dad used to give each single week's small amount of cash to
Like a allowance.
to my biggest brothers. Usually, what they used to do with that cash
Oh no.
was to go to buy, music. At the time, we had those things, we call it cassette.
Mhm.
You see.
That is before me.
Yeah. So then they used to buy a lot of cassette and also some books, and they were not attracted with the same things. Some of them was very much attracted with, reggae things. Some others was very much French culture oriented. So then you,
You guys had the money and the privilege to get whatever you wanted
they
in
were, at
terms of
least
that.
they got this,
Mhm.
at least they got this. So then yeah, so and and mm, I myself, we were too young to get, this weekly,
Understand the kind.
yeah,
Okay.
this weekly cash, but we were able to read, we were able also to appreciate the music.
Mhm.
So then I grew up with all these, books here and there. And I have read from my house, for example, the Livre Rouge de Mao, the red book of Mao Zedong. I have read the Livre Vert de Gaddafi, the green books of Muammar Gaddafi.
You had a lot of
Yeah,
philosophy growing up.
yeah. And I was very young, but those books was in my house. I was also having in my house the general African history, edited by UNESCO, and so and so and so. You see, so but particularly, I got that book written by Frantz Fanon, and the name in French is Les Damnés de la Terre, the creature of the earth. And then that book has changed all, because, and I do remember, and also we were listening a lot of Bob Marley, so,
Mhm.
those kind of things. And yeah, Fanon has played a very important role, and it make me a different uh, high school, uh, and it make me become a non-regular high school guys.
Mhm.
You
You
know,
you were an outlier.
yeah, I
You had a different understanding.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely, and having the conversation I was also having with my teachers at the time, most of them, I think, yeah, yeah, and also it make me become,
You were a favorite student?
I think I got the chance most of my life, even though sometimes, I could have some problems with some teachers, but I have the feeling that I have been always very much respected by my teachers, and I think it's because probably uh, I had been, as I say, high school students. Maybe that inspired disrespect to them, because yeah, I was very much involved, with maybe some kind of literature. They recall them at the time. Maybe they were more young. I don't know. So
Mhm.
that it happens
It's
like that.
not typical for the other students to have that knowledge.
At the time, it was not typical, because when I got, like 14 and having already read Fanon, and even having read, even though I didn't understand very much, but I knew a lot about, this Harlem Renaissance moment, W.E.B. Du Bois, L'Âme Noire, the Negro Soul.
Mhm.
Those things were, around me, and I could, and also I was having these intellectual tools, to be to play a role in my schools, to try with some other colleagues and comrades, to get organized, so then we can also challenge the administration, because we were having this in our soul, in our body, so that we wanted to, yeah, we wanted to provoke troubles, we wanted to challenge the authority, we wanted to set, collective demands and to
Mm.
organize all this. Yeah, it had been my, let's say, teenager, growing up. Yeah.
So, how did we get to Gaston Berger University?
Yeah, so this is very much important because also it's important to put this in a global picture.
Mm.
At the time I was growing up and becoming a militant. At the time, we were not talking about activists, but we were just a militant, so someone who get dedicated himself to a cause, for example. It was, uh, the critical time was late 80s to early 90s. But late 80s to early 90s, remember, you you got all this, the fall of the Berlin Wall. You got also the first Intifada in Palestine.
Mm.
What we call it, the War of Stone. The first Intifada, the second Intifada, and at the time we were having struck, and we were also having demonstrations in the Dakar streets, getting chased by the police, and also, getting threatened by the administration of our school to put us outside.
Just a lot going on.
Yeah, it's a lot going on, and also a crisis of the democracy in Senegal. The ruling party had been for the first time very seriously, contested. I say for the first time, maybe I'm wrong, because in 1968 the contestation used also to be very strong.
Mm.
But anyhow, in 1988 and 1989, so my generation, the protestation also was very strong.
Mm.
You see, so, and we were part of this, and that's why also that people had been called, in the contemporary history in Senegal, the 88 generation. So I'm part of the 88 generation.
So then, getting to
Mm,
Gaston Berger University,
mm,
what exactly led you
mm.
to become a part of the staff?
Yeah, sorry. I blindsided this question. So after the high school, and I went to the university first in Senegal,
Mm.
and I ended up to the Department of Philosophy, of Dakar.
I mean, it makes sense
Yeah,
considering you read the red book, you read the
yeah,
green book, you already
yeah,
had that brewing from being
yeah,
a young
yeah.
child.
And while I was there at the University of Antijob, from University of Antijob, I now understood what was going on in my father's house when I was kids. So then all those history I narrate here in the beginning got there, enlightened when I was to the university, because when I was to the university and I started to learn in the critical way the contemporary history, so then I learned what was the states, how the states had been ruled, and what was the nationalism at that time as an ideology, and also an economical approaches to build progress and development, and that I understood. And also I learned, how the bank system, national bank system, has been followed. And
Mm.
then I started to make connection between what my father was saying that I didn't very much understand, and the things I learned, at the university. Yet I had been able then to better understand the history of my country at the time I was at the university. But also I got new insights about how marginalized Africa is,
Hmm.
you know, in the global system of production of knowledge, but also in the global system of production of respect.
Hmm.
Because as I said, I was a student on philosophy, and you know, we were very proud to be in this university, but also we were having the feeling that most of the people were just something completely different to what we were
Mm.
as, as Africans and also as Black peoples, you know. So yeah, I got this, and also I learned some new disciplines I didn't know before, like anthropology, and the anthropology that had been taught at the time at the university Sheikh Anta Diop was a typical kind of anthropology because it was anthropology for the 19th centuries. And as the 19th centuries, all these racism, corpula and knowledge that had been built against Black people, you know, have their location at that time, so then the Black man or the Negro is someone, he's not a half man, his brain did not work, he's a primitive, all these kind of things,
Mm.
so then I get through this literature and I say, okay, what does this? You know, and it also motivates me to say, okay, maybe I want to be an anthropologist because I want to
You want to
go in. Yeah, I
change
want to go
what you're
into
doing.
this and try to see how to undermine this. So this is this very bad reason. That's why I decided because also my mom started to get very much anxious about my involvement in several movement. So
Mm.
then also she insisted a lot, So then side to side, uh, uh, his worries and anxiousness, and insistence at having me, leave Senegal, and also this intellectual, calling I got, uh, to try to see how to go and to be anthropologist because at the time we don't really teach anthropology as a whole disciplines, but you just have a kind of minor or major in anthropology. So that I wanted to go to France to learn and try to undermine this. And also, I had some comrades with whom I got tremendous time, who was already in France. So then, yeah, for this several reason, I go to France. I spend there, couple of years, and then get back home. And after I get back home, couple of years again after I had been hired to the university, Gaston Berger at Saint Louis.
Well, there we go. So I do have it's a bit of a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first left Senegal
Mm-hmm.
to go to France,
Mm-hmm.
seeing, other Black people,
Yeah.
other African people,
Mm-hmm.
people different from you
Mm-hmm.
with the same skin,
Mm-hmm.
what did you understand
Mm-hmm.
of the African diaspora then?
Mm-hmm.
And how have your views changed on it to today?
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Actually, I arrived in France, and there was an ongoing movement for the undocumented Africans there. You know, that movement started a couple of years before I arrived. I think the momentum also have somehow passed before I arrived. But when I arrived, anyhow, that movement was still here
Mm.
with some demonstration from time to time on the streets, etc., etc. And also, when I arrived, I go to get linked myself with some political groups there, you know, some Trotskyist movements, etc. Some people were, they were involved in Quatrième Internationals, So then all these uh, far left wing movement, and radicals, etc., etc. And they were very much involved with in the case of Mumia Abu Jamal.
Mm.
And I remember we were organizing quite every single Saturday, or very often some Saturday afternoon, a small demonstration, in some place, the south of Montpellier, for Mumia Abu Jamal. So, at these demonstrations, I can say I felt myself a little bit alone because you need also to understand the sociology of migration, particularly at that time. Who was the one who were able to migrate as a student somehow? You know, you could have a few minority, they could have go to Europe because they are so excellent, then the states give them grant to go.
Hmm.
But most of the guys, they just had been able to go to Europe because their parents were Italians, you know, political Italians
Hmm.
of the regime.
They had the money.
They had,
They had the
yeah,
support.
corruptions,
Hmm.
and they go. And the others, their parents just had to make big sacrifice, to go. At the time, and for my case, my big brothers, made this sacrifice, and and pay for me, so, my travels. So then I went there. So when you arrive into this context, your fellow citizen and you constitute a kind of political fields, and in these political fields, the whole majority are very much conservative, you
Mm.
know and very much linked to the power in your country, and also corruption stuff. So then that's why having, the relation is never very much easy, because when also they see you getting involved in the unions,
They're confused.
they confuse, and they don't like this very much, you see. So that was at the time what was happening, you know and then, yeah, most of my comrades then were mostly white folks. They
Hmm.
were involved in these, activist movement. Also, I have I got the chance to explain this couple of years ago, to some networks at Berlin. Networks of educators, Afro descent educators at
Hmm.
Berlin. That at the time, for me, for example, in France, I was demonstrating for the undocumented African migrants. We were not seeing them. We were not seeing our our brothers who had been born in France, for example.
Hmm.
You know, and there is also somehow an issues on this, because most of them also, at least at that time, wouldn't very much associate their image, with the Africans,
Hmm.
you know. But now I think this is something completely changed, because right now I'm seeing kind of, you know, political awareness, and people are trying to get, more close to the African
Their
roots.
roots.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I think it's just so shocking. Like this,
Mm,
this is
mm,
news to me.
mm,
How
mm,
we can look so similar,
mm,
but fundamentally and ideologically be so
mhm.
different. So
Exact.
different, so
Yeah.
that you would attribute them to the ruling class and
Hmm.
not as your ally. That
Exact.
is shocking.
Exact.
Now,
Mm,
before we get into this week's artist spotlight,
mm,
my last question for you:
mhm,
throughout your whole life, with
mm,
this history of
mm,
instability in
mm,
your country of Senegal,
mm.
what is the biggest life lesson that you have learned that you can pass on to the people watching and listening to this?
Hmm. To never surrender. To never surrender. You know, right now in my country, we have a big problem. You know, and people are shocked. The police repression is highest possible as possible, but people try. People try. So then, never surrender, and also the resistance now requires a more complex understanding, because the problem we face with uh, also has becoming very vital complex, you
It's
know.
evolving.
Yeah. it's- and but yeah, yeah, I think surrounding is not good, and there is some things that call us, and we need to manage to answer that call, to go this direction.
I agree. I think
Mm,
surrendering
mm,
sends the biggest possible
mm,
message that
mm,
you can,
mm,
because it tells the powers that
mm,
are that
mm.
what they're doing is fine
Exactly.
and that nothing will unseat them.
Exactly.
So I do agree to never
Yeah.
surrender.
Yeah.
Now, getting into this week's artist spotlight,
Mm.
I'll be playing a snippet
Okay.
from the band If Kansas Had Trees. This
Okay.
is their song Swallow.
Okay.
So I
Nice.
hope that y'all enjoy.
Let's see this.
When I'm away, I can feel you try and drown me. I lie awake to let your poison ground me, and I let the past sink and fall to know what it's like to swallow whole.
Hope y'all enjoyed that snippet from Swallow by If Kansas Had Trees. I'll be linking their Instagram and their artist pages in the description of this episode. Now, getting into the second half of this week's interview,
Mm.
we'll be talking about Dr. Abdu's current work and current research into something that he calls memography.
Mhm.
I leave the floor open to you.
Thanks very much. Yeah. So, memography is concrete about what I'm doing actually as a scholar, as an academics, but also it's a continuity, a logic continuity of what I think had been also my the history of the life,
Your
yeah,
life,
my
yeah.
life, yeah, to say it this way, because sometimes some words may look so very pretentious, my life. You see, but anyhow, it happens that today, and particularly at the time I started to be very uh, to be very into kind of doubt
Mm.
of the political parties and system can truly change things, and this happens by the early 2000s, and yeah, a couple of years after the turn of 2000, I decided to not know be part of any political parties. Today it changed, because in Senegal we are going through so difficult time. So then I decided to, to go and to, you know, uh, do my best to help one group, to see what we can do.
So just to clarify, you called
Yeah,
yourself an independent.
yeah, independent.
Mhm.
So then I got to be by the 2000 an independent. So I don't know because we have this big problem that in the it's a concept coming from the United States came, and spread very much strongly, etc., etc. So then, just to not people get me wrong, when I say by independent here is just, I used to be in some political parties, and by 2000s and plus, I decided to know more because, for my understanding at the time, the political parties was truly, you know, a part of the problem
Mhm.
of untied Africa to the disadvantage situations. And then I decided to go and to work, in a very organic ways with what we call in French association, but maybe the right word in English, maybe, kind of organic anyway, organic ties.
You're trying to be the change that you want to see because you can't trust the political parties to do
Yes,
so.
yeah, this is what happened at the time, you know. And I decided to work in two specific fields. The first one field was how we can transform knowledge in terms of weapon, of term of decolonizing uh, weapon, and to master the narrative about ourselves, and to create a critical common ground, the colonial knowledge, so then we can gain the sovereignty, because we are not under our own sovereignty. And until we not get this sovereignty, no hope to see the big decision about us going alongside our benefit. So then this is one thing. And so also one things, and this first things, sorry, is what I try to call uh, epistemologic liberation. So then to be more a fighter for an epistemologic liberation of the continent, one. And this come with getting in touch with the African diaspora, and also learning about, Black radical traditions, and learning about, all the African diaspora has been already built in terms of critical knowledge, decolonial knowledge, etc. And so also one side of my action was how to use the most problematic things we may have. For example, we all know about the street foods in Africa. So then street food in Africa is something quite different to what you may see in Asia. Even in Asia, street food is part of the appealing touristic things. In Africa, it's by necessity mostly, and that also street food is also a screen through which you can read a lot about imbalance, people you know who are facing social and economical disadvantage, etc., etc., etc. So our idea was to work with food, and through food to try to see how we can concretely transform a problem in a wagon or train of changes. So then, yeah, those two things happen to be my two fields of of interest. So, and memography also came this way somehow, and it means, how can I be a Senegalese anthropologist without betraying my people and my societies? Because we must be very aware to the global demands of informations about Africa right now. All these situation we have today, USA is against Russia, China, European Union, France, all these big uh, fightings and war. Africa is truly the purpose of all this, because it's all a matter of guaranteeing and securing the access of what is Africa today. So the place where the most important richness are, the place that the people are, so there's a lot of things, you see. So then, and this requires having information. This requires having knowledge.
That could probably feel like a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, at least a lot of pressure on all the continent. A lot of pressure on all the continent. So then, what are we having? So then, more we are integrated in this framework, and more we will be able to be our own voice, and to research our own needs and our own problematics. But will remain kind of informators, like Paulin Hutonji, who just passed away. Peace on his soul. A great man, was told, the international divide of scientific labor. that making us as Africans just an informators, and the place to process the informators are in the north, So then how we go outside this is a challenge. But mostly again, for me, the most important challenge is what we are and who we are if we are not a scientific and academic who place first the general interest of the continent. So far those general interests did not go to hurt anyone else, because this is also something and important to keep on mind, you see. So for now, how to defend Africa within the framework of this, very systematic and balanced relation between Africa and the other university in the world. So then memography for me is a new way to try to learn from the community, for the community, So that means, for example, I can't be, as I said, an anthropologist, but I can be something different. As an anthropologist, I will come and check on you, watch on you,
but not live with you.
not truly, at least I will say, not truly sharing with you the same condition. And memography starts by the fact that I would acknowledge that you and I, we're sharing the same history, the same conditions, and maybe have the same general interest to free our space. So the knowledge I will try to have is not a knowledge I will extract to you, but a knowledge that will come up through our conversations. That requires different kind of approaches and non-methodology. I'm not here setting a protocol to bring you from this point to this point, and then to be able to show to my, colleagues that, you see, this is knowledge that had been collected in the, due protocol way.
We get this authentically and organically.
Très bien. Oh, yes.
I know what you said. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. You see, this is, and also for the purpose of what we can, you and I go to get the sovereignty, the emancipation, and the respect that we want today. Not going anywhere else in the world and getting treated like a,
subhuman.
Yeah, subhuman in any single borders. This is a big problem. So then knowledge must be at the service of helping the continent to regain respect, to be part of the global conversation on global issues.
Africa is definitely behind in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And how we fix this, and we can't fix this if we still get ourselves kept in the bars of disciplines and of methods. So we need to get something different. We need to go over the fact that when I arrive as an anthropologist or as a sociologist, I'm in a kind of arena. I and the guys I'm supposed to watch on, we're in a kind of arena. I pretend that I will gonna build knowledge on them, and they pretend that they will gonna take advantage on me somehow. So what is going on here? What is going on here is exactly what the colonization time has brought in our system to put us back to back.
Pit us against each other.
Exact.
That keeps us from allowing the political power of Africa to match the natural power of Africa.
Exactly.
Africa is so abundant in terms of culture, in terms of resources. The entire world wants to take a piece of Africa.
Exactly.
But we need to take those pieces and put them together.
Yeah, this is for me the purpose, how we can and how we must repurpose, knowledge production in Africa. And by doing memography, we can fix several kind of things. My research can't come and hurt you. My research can't come and just be, a path for me to do my career things,
Mhm.
And also my research must be a kind of echo, a kind of echo of what we have all together passed through, you know. So then what we have is, the way that we want to write this. And when you have memography, it's about, you know, where we come from, and who we are, and how we want to write this,
Mhm.
you know, which that means which kind of knowledge, which kind of statement, which kind of parameter we want all together write or draw or sing
To show to the world.
to show to the world, but also to help us to reconstitute our dislocated,
Mm.
realities. So, that's that you do have, epistemological dimension here, political commitment, but also healing aspect. So then that's why I'm talking about memography, because we want to reconstitute something that went dislocated.
Mhm.
Chinua Achebe has put this book that he called it, uh, Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart was the first title in original. Yeah, Things Fall Apart. Book is Things Fall Apart. And we had been all fallen apart, and now we need something like a knowledge that help us to heal the dislocation. To help us to rebuild the memory. You know, and we and to get the rebuildings and the reconstitutions like a graphy again. But that graphic can be also a song, it can be also a film, a podcast, etc. And anyhow, we must feel again, uh reunified, unified again.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay. So, to make this digestible,
Mm.
to put a bow on this
Mm.
episode, what I'm going to do is
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about the three aspects that you touched on. You
Mm.
touched on defining Africa and for the world.
Mm.
You touched on the role that food, specifically street food,
Mm.
has in this. And then we touched on hold on, why is this leaving my mind? I was just thinking about this.
Mm.
We touched on hold on. I'm trying to think of the first section that you were talking about. We were talking about defining Africa. We talked about the role of food, and we talked about. See,
A lot of things.
we did talk about a lot of things. I knew I should have started from the beginning because I started from the end. I went back to front. I should have went front to back. What was that first? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we also talk a lot at the beginning to the nation states, you know, um, yeah, civil servants, kids,
I
etc.
remember. I remember now. So let me start this over.
Mm.
To put a bow on this episode,
Mm.
I'm going to ask you to summarize
Mm.
in 2 to 3 sentences,
Mm.
the three things that we talked about in the second half.
Mm.
This first, we talked about turning words
Mm.
into weapons to fight colonialism.
Mhm.
We talked about the role
Mm.
that food has in memography.
Mm.
We talked about defining Africa
Mm.
to the world.
Mm.
So, in 2 to 3 sentences, let's start with the first one: how we can turn words into a decolonizing weapon.
By organizing concrete initiative and concrete move. When we talk about food, this is very much concrete things. So then, uh, to discuss with people and having with them, to empowerment them,
Implement them.
to
Yeah.
empowerment them. For example, street food was for us a program. We failed to realize this, but you know Meanwhile, we had been able to organize a Pan-African food festival, food as decolonial weapon. But the full picture we got on mind when we were starting this is to go and to provide training to every single street vendor, to make him feel, you know, uh, how how mu- how his place and what
How
he's doing,
important he
yeah,
is.
he is, and what he can do for the community. If as a labor I come, I need my food because I have also to go, to build my building somewhere. you know he can talk to me, oh guys, you need protein, oh guys, this is this, and this came from no to any single, dangerous exported food, but directly to the garden just behind the city, those kind of things. This is those kind of ecology, you know, of rebuilding the kinship, you know, valuing the kinship. And kinship is not a matter of biology, So then, uh, bringing again what James Baldwin was calling us, that we need to be able to love again one each other, into community. So then this is the first step. So then, yeah, what what the neoliberalism and the new colonialism made to us is that it that we is something that we become indifferent,
Mm.
neutral, and even aggressive and violent vis-a-vis of the brothers and sisters, etc., etc. And the first victory we can try to figure out is, okay, from what I am, from where I am, from what I am doing, I will contribute to better take care, you know, to my neighbor, to better take care to the city, to the etc., etc. So then this is kind of adventure, I think, we may need to build. And by building this, we transform all our words on weapons to decolonize our history and also our becoming.
I see the vision. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you very much.
Now, before we log off for today, is there anything else that you want to get across to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, maybe to share how how glad I feel to be here this morning and to have that conversations, and also to have the feeling that that conversation, even though I am not familiar with the program, come alongside, a long series of testimony of from people who try to make it, to make happen, all these things we had been discussing this morning. So then it made me feel part of the communities and part of this family. And I hope that this may continue to grow here and there. Today here in Pittsburgh, and maybe very next and soon from Saint Louis in Senegal, where I come from. Yeah, thanks very much.
We do stand together in
Yeah.
solidarity. We all work
Mm.
together
Mm.
to further the goal of social innovation.
Nice.
Yeah,
Cool. Thanks very much.
very appreciative to have you on.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
for everybody watching and listening, again, Dr. Abdourahmane Seck, I'll have links to his publications and his research in the description. This is your host, Ian Kahende. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode, and we're signing off. Peace out, everybody.
Thanks.